So my name is James Graham, and I am a cybersecurity cloud solution architect at Microsoft. And it's my role to work with our managed partners to support them with developing and bringing security solutions to the market and working with them to build and grow technical skills in this area. Now, I look to achieve this by evangelizing Microsoft security through one-to-one engagements and one-to-many engagements by organizing and running events, such as this event aimed at our partner technical community. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I wanted to cover off a few areas with you. I want to pass on to you some insights of what trends we have seen with our customers and share what our short-term developments in the threat protection space are focused on. And finally, I will focus on zero trust, providing insight on how you can act now to improve your posture against the sophisticated attacks that we see around us today, such as what Paddy was talking about. So the past 12 months have been a remarkable time of digital transformation as organizations and especially digital security teams adapt to working remotely and shifting business operations. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen an acceleration of two existing secular trends that only intensifies our strategy. First, the advent of remote everything and the need to secure it, beginning with the social distancing requirements of COVID-19. We have seen most customers move to have at least 50% of their workforce working remotely. So now this is a big shift from previous results where security decision makers reported that only 22% of their workforce was remote. And we've seen that number now grow up to 82%. And we can see many organizations embracing remote working as the new norm well beyond COVID-19. And second, operational resilience. Only 54% of CISOs indicated that their operational resilience plans had prepared them adequately for the pandemic. And we saw this drive a need for our solutions. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, stay up to date with updates on the world of cybercrime. And it's been very clear that cyber criminals are continuously evolving their techniques. Criminal groups are skilled and relentless. They've become adept at evolving their techniques to increase success rates, whether by experimenting with different phishing lures, adjusting the types of attacks they execute, or finding new ways to hide their work. They move quickly to discover new threat vectors, use new exploits, and respond to new defenses. The lack of basic security hygiene in any given ecosystem continues to enable cyber criminals to use well-known vulnerabilities or new variants of them to exploit their environments. They were observed to leverage the fear and uncertainty associated with COVID-19 with great success. Our tracking of COVID-19 themed attacks shows how rapidly cyber criminals move to adapt their lures to the topics of today. And in these graphs, you can see instances of malware encounters in relation to the local news events of the day. For example, we see as the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic in March last year, there was a corresponding rise in COVID-themed lures. Similarly, as lockdowns were relaxed, there was a corresponding decline in the number of COVID-themed encounters. Email phishing in the enterprise context continues to grow and has become a dominant vector. In past years, we've seen cyber criminals focused on malware attacks. However, more recently, they have shifted their focus to phishing attacks as a more direct means to achieve their goal of harvesting people's credentials. And from our view in Office 365 telemetry, we see customers facing three main types of phishing. The first being credential phishing. So once a credential has been compromised, it's then used to launch different kill chains to build further persistence inside an organization by using cloud-only APIs and systems, and then to move laterally to steal data, money, or otherwise breach the organization. And another one that Paddy mentioned then is business email compromise, characterized by techniques used to pose as someone who the victims will likely take notice of, such as the company's CEO or CFO. Business email compromise can also involve a business-to-business transaction. For example, the cybercriminal might fraudulently access a company's system and then pose as that company to fraudulently request payment from another company. And we're also seeing attack kill chains that combine the two forms to deliver more sophisticated kill chains. This attack can, say, start with credential phishing. Once an account has been compromised, the cybercriminal sets up a mailbox forwarding rules to monitor for financial transactions. And then often these forwarding rules will include specific keywords and then send all relevant email to a collection email account controlled and monitored by the cybercriminal. The cybercriminal can then insert a victim impersonation email in the middle of a communication to misdirect and steal money or information. Now, our own detection and response team has observed that ransomware continues to be the most common reason behind our incident response engagements. More threat actors are using open source tools to initiate the attack that ultimately delivers ransomware payloads. The malware used in these incidents is usually delivered through spear phishing or by exploiting public-facing applications. And then we see human-operated ransomware. We sometimes see this as referred to as big game ransomware, a term that implies cybercriminals select specific networks for their value proposition and then hunt for entry vectors. This approach has been the exception, not the rule, in most major ransomware attacks in the past year. Human-operated ransomware gangs are performing massive, wide-ranging sweeps of the internet, searching for vulnerable entry points as they bank that access, waiting for a time that is advantageous to their purpose. Protecting against these types of ransomware attacks is an area we're currently focused on. We see these campaigns as significant and growing threats to businesses and represent one of the most impactful trends in cyber attacks today. In these hands-on keyboard attacks, which are different from auto-spreading ransomware like WannaCry or NotPetya, adversaries employ credential theft and then lateral movement methods traditionally associated with targeted attacks like those from nation-state actors. They exhibit extensive knowledge of systems administration and common network security misconfigurations, perform thorough reconnaissance, and adapt to what they discover in a compromised network. These attacks are known to take advantage of network configuration weaknesses and vulnerable services to deploy ransomware payloads. And while ransomware is the very visible action taken in these attacks, human operators also deliver other malicious payloads, steal credentials, and access and exfiltrate data from compromised networks. While human-operated ransomware campaigns vary in their tools and ultimate choice of ransomware payload, all of them need to operate in a similar manner to effectively enter a network and move laterally to achieve their goals. So while initial entry vectors can vary, such as through unpatched vulnerabilities, the biggest factor leading to success in moving through multiple systems and deploying ransomware is a cybercriminal's ability to gain access to highly privileged account credentials. And in these campaigns, even if the ransom is paid, some attackers remain active on affected networks with persistence via PowerShell Empire and other malware on machines that may seem unrelated to ransomware activities. And to fully recover from these attacks, comprehensive incident response procedures and subsequent network hardening need to be performed. So while human-operated attacks require a shift in mindset, a rethink almost, the challenges they pose aren't necessarily unique. Removing the ability of attackers to move laterally from one machine to another in a network would make the impact of human-operated ransomware attacks less impactful and make the network more resilient against all kinds of cyber attacks. The top recommendations for mitigating ransomware and other human-operated campaigns are to practice credential hygiene and stop unnecessary communication between endpoints. So that moves on to where customers can start when considering how they can protect themselves from modern sophisticated attacks against a dispersed workforce out in the wild? Well, we have to shift to a zero trust approach to alleviate the challenges of enabling and securing remote work. And looking back, zero trust at one point was something of interest to learn about. And most organizations were very much in the exploratory phase. But as COVID-19 forced organizations across the world to send their workforce home, organizations rapidly focused on zero trust approaches to alleviate this challenge, using zero trust to secure users, data, and devices wherever they may be, has changed from optional to a business imperative overnight. Companies found that traditional security models require bringing users and data to safe network places, which doesn't scale and doesn't provide the needed visibility. Employees are getting their work done any way they can, using personal devices, sharing data through new services, and collaborating outside the confines of traditional protections of the corporate network. Now, earlier adopters of zero trust approaches were able to adapt quickly, but many of us instantly faced an expanded attack surface area and new security challenges they weren't fully prepared for. And also the rapid acceleration of remote working saw a sharp rise in RDP traffic, thus providing soft targets to bad actors. So what's needed is a pivot to boundaryless security. And in a zero trust model, all users and devices, both inside and outside the corporate network, are deemed untrustworthy. Access is granted based on a dynamic evaluation of risk associated with each request. The same security checks are applied to all users, devices, applications, and data every time. Now, we see interest in zero trust growing, especially among organizations looking for a way to prevent attackers from moving laterally on the network. However, getting to a zero trust model can take years of effort and require collaboration across the entire enterprise. However, if you're committed to deploying a zero trust model, or even if you're just considering it, I've got some tips here that can hopefully help your journey be a bit smoother. And where I always start is identity. So identity is the best starting point for zero trust. We know that users can have multiple devices and access enterprise resources from a variety of networks and apps. Almost all these resources require authentication, making identity a common denominator across all access requests, whether from a personal device on a public Wi-Fi network or a corporate device inside the network perimeter. Using identity as the control plane lets companies treat every single access request as untrusted until the user, device, and other factors are fully vetted. And then once you have identity down, it's then time to build on that by implementing conditional access controls. As I've already stated, bad actors routinely compromise identity credentials and use them to access systems and move laterally in the network. Trust cannot therefore be inferred solely from whether a particular user or their device is inside or outside the corporate network. Instead, adopt an assume breach mindset, as Paddy mentioned as well, and trust no request until it's fully vetted. For zero trust, access control decisions should be dynamic and granted conditionally based on an evaluation and contextual understanding of the risk associated with every single request across multiple dimensions. This conditional access approach considers user identity, access rights, device health, application and network safety, and of course the sensitivity of the data that's being accessed. So we have identity governance in place, and we've also implemented conditional access to gate access to resource. However, we still need to consider passwords. Weak passwords undermine the security of your identity system and make it easy for hackers to compromise your network via, for example, password spraying or credential stuffing attacks. Making multi-factor authentication a part of conditional access restrictions can help enable better user verification and limit the ability of hackers to misuse stolen credentials. It provides an initial layer of user validation, especially for gating access to critical applications and data. Now, so far I've just covered 3 simple steps to start your journey to enable zero trust security. And I need to call out, I'm just scratching the surface here. There are many more steps along the journey of enabling zero trust security. However, in the interest of time, to close out on zero trust, I want to leave you with this. Zero trust is a model for the future. The zero trust model is not easy to achieve, but it's a key element along any long-term secure modernization objective for the digital enterprise. However, we must also bear in mind that your identity and endpoint infrastructure can generate a high volume of security events and alerts. And to cater for this, we need a SIEM system to aggregate and correlate the data to better detect suspicious activities and patterns that indicate potential network intrusions and events such as leaked credentials, bad IP addresses, and access from infected devices. A SIEM system can be used to audit user activity, document compliance with regulatory requirements, and help with forensic analysis. And we offer this holistic view of security through your organization through Azure Sentinel and Microsoft Defender, our solution for extended detection and response, what we call XDR. Azure Sentinel is a cloud-native SIEM and provides a bird's eye view across the enterprise, helping you see and stop threats before they cause harm. Artificial intelligence helps you make your threat detection and responses faster and smarter. At the same time, you gain an end-to-end view of your organization by easily connecting data from your Microsoft products and third-party sources. Azure Sentinel also eliminates security infrastructure setup and maintenance and scales to meet your organization needs. So together, Microsoft 365 Defender and Azure Defender deliver an end-to-end XDR solution for threat detection and response across your Microsoft estate in the cloud, on-premise and in other clouds. And then connect Microsoft Defender to Azure Sentinel and benefit from the comprehensiveness of a SIEM and signal prioritization of an XDR. Essentially, consider Sentinel as the breadth and Defender as the depth. And on that note, I'm going to stop talking. I'll just close out on one final point. The only way we as Microsoft can scale our solutions is through partners like ITC Secure. So please, if you're considering how you can adopt some of these strategies I've touched on today or want to measure your posture, I recommend reaching out and having a discussion on how they can help you. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Arno.
James, thank you very much for your insight and the inside track on what Microsoft has observed over the last year. As external industry experts, we have, from the outside in, firsthand witnessed the significant and rapid advancement of Microsoft security workloads, not just pandemic related, but even before that. And definitely the topics of zero trust and the focus on prioritizing the security of the endpoint, linking that to central monitoring that you touched on there is something that clients are getting a lot of value from in this new world that we're operating in now. I'll group two questions together, if I may, James. One is from an unnamed participant saying, will we ever stop email phishing completely? Straightforward question. And then the second is from Alex Chukwu, head of IT at 3i PLC. Is multi-factor authentication enough to protect against credential compromise, or should businesses do more from a control perspective? So phishing and multi-factor to protect against that and identity theft, is that enough, or should businesses be doing more around controlling it?
Oh, great questions. Yeah. Where to start? I guess you can never do enough, right, to protect yourselves against phishing attacks in particular. I would say I could answer from a tooling perspective and feature and product perspective, but let's consider it a different way. I think it's predominantly about education for your end users in your organization. I think you need to really help your end users understand and be able to detect when a phishing attack is underway. So be able to visibly understand when something's not right with an email or a request for their credentials. And you can do that in a number of ways by, I suppose, running fire drills. And we provide some great simulation tools in our products to allow you to do that. So yeah, in short, really, it's about user education. You can have as many protections and controls in place as possible, which will, of course, reduce that attack surface, but ultimately, you're at the mercy of your end users who will fall for those attacks. So education is key for that. And then I think from MFA being enough to, I think MFA is tough, right? Because it's easy to go trigger happy with MFA and have MFA prompts for every single access request. However, that can have a negative effect because you can end up having bad habits with your end users, and suddenly, rather than checking if an MFA request is actually something that they've initiated, they will just get to the habit of just approving every MFA. So when potentially a bad actor has compromised that identity, they would just approve an MFA request without checking. So deploy MFA in an intelligent way and a controlled way, but then also it's never enough to protect yourself from credential compromise. I think one additional way, which is a key one, is when we see these attack chains and the similarities between them, when these bad actors compromise a network, they use the similar techniques to move laterally, and that is gathering credential stealing, credential hashes. So you need to protect those secrets, and they use common things like Mimikatz or proc dump to dump the LSAS from memory to harvest those secrets. So if you're on Windows 10 and you don't have Credential Guard switched on, switch that on as your first instance, but also just consider your security at depth, and really reach out to your partners like ITC Secure to really help you understand these challenges. We also have niche partners like identity experts who really can do great assessments with your identity challenges and also provide great solutions to identity and access management and zero trust.
Thank you very much, James. And we've seen firsthand that holy trinity that you described there about finding the right technology solution, applying the right governance, which is risk management policy and procedure, the rules, and then educating the users. And that trinity of governance, technology, and people sounds like a very effective defense there. James, thank you very much for your insights today. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate the partnership that we have found in Microsoft. We thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to work with you and your team.